Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Parenting Issues. I'm your host, Nicole Brody, and today's episode is one that really touches on a topic many families face but don't always talk about openly: raising children with chronic illness. Navigating medical challenges can feel overwhelming for parents and kids alike, but there is strength and resilience that we can build together. We're here to talk about that today with a true expert. Joining us today is a certified child life specialist, Jules Lewis. She's been working with children and families facing medical challenges for years and holds a Master's of Science in Child Life and Pediatric Psychosocial Care. Jules, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to dive into this important conversation.
Definitely. So, to start, can you tell us a little bit more about what a child life specialist does and how your work supports children and families dealing with chronic illness?
Yeah, I'd love to. So, as a certified child life specialist, my role is to provide psychosocial support to children and teens, as well as their families facing medical challenges. So, it involves a lot of different things, all with the goal of helping to support positive coping. For example, some of these things that I might do include explaining and preparing patients for medical procedures in a developmentally appropriate way, supporting in the moment coping during procedures, teaching patients about their illness and medical treatments in a way they can understand, creating coping plans, helping families navigate life with chronic illness, helping patients express and understand emotions related to their healthcare or medical journey, addressing anxieties and stressors related to the medical environment. And I mean, that's a long list, but there's even more. And I completed a bachelor's, a master's, volunteer work, internships, and a certification exam to become a child life specialist.
Wonderful. And before we move on, was there any how did you become this specialist? Because it's quite a challenging role that you have. What made you want to have this role, this special role in your work?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was actually a child with chronic illness. I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease just after I turned 13, and it was a pretty life-changing event. It was a lot of hospital stays, a lot of tests and procedures, tubes, surgeries. And I like the only memory I have from that time where I felt calm in the hospital environment was when I had a child life specialist with me for a PICC line. It was an unsedated procedure, but a very scary one. I took a while to get back to like the hospital environment. I took a break from healthcare in my career, and then when I was graduating my bachelor's, I decided I wanted to pursue it.
Wow, I have chills. That's well, because it's such a specialized, it's a challenging role and so specialized. So
Mhm.
I thought maybe there was something that happened in your life that made you want to give back because you truly understand. And there's no better way to help someone when you've already gone through it yourself. So thank you for sharing that personal.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thank you for asking.
So, as I said, it's such an important role, especially with so many emotions in these situations. What are some of the most common challenges that you see parents and, of course, children facing when it comes to chronic illness?
Yeah, that's a great and a really important question for us to be asking. There are many different factors and that can influence the struggles that family might face with chronic illnesses. And so there might be some challenges that are common and there might be some that are more unique. But one challenge for children with chronic illness is the feeling of being different from their peers. Patients might not know anyone else their age facing medical challenges, so they might have a hard time relating to their peers in this way. And this can lead to a lot of big emotions, feelings of sadness, anxiety, isolation. And as parents and trusted adults, it's important to validate the child's feelings, help them process their emotions, and make sure that they still feel connected to normal life. This is something that we call normalization. Additionally, it's really important to continue to normalize their experiences. And by that, I mean letting them know that they aren't alone, that there's other people their age that also face medical challenges, and that they can continue to live a full life while coping with their illness. Another big struggle that a lot of children and teens can have when it comes to chronic illness is feelings of uncertainty, worry, or anxiety about their medical journey when they don't know what to expect when it comes to things like tests, procedures, medications, even doctor's appointments. Children can imagine the worst case scenario. They have a lot of imaginative thinking, and it can be worse than anything we might think of. So it's important to provide them with age appropriate, personalized, and curated information about what to expect on their healthcare journey as appropriate. And this is one of the many jobs of a child life specialist. So if this is something that feels overwhelming for parents to navigate, it's okay because there is support available to help you navigate that.
Wonderful. And do you specifically deal with certain age groups? Is there an age for who you help? I mean, does it start at a certain age? Does it end at a certain age? Or is it just, do you know what I mean? I would love to just hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. It depends on your role, but child life specialists are qualified to help kids from the day they are born until they turn 18. So there will be child life specialists that work specifically in the NICU, and they would primarily focus on babies and their siblings. The population that I work with is typically kids aged 8 to 18, but I will see younger kids as well.
Wow, amazing. It's so interesting. I have twins, and one of them was in the intensive care. So that means that someone who is looking after those would they look after the parents then in those situations, right?
Yeah,
And
they would also provide parental support. Yeah.
wow, I love it. It's amazing. What an important role for parents and children. So how can parents offer that emotional support for their children going through these challenges or this illness? How can they, manage their own worries? Because I think that's something we're so worried about our children, but perhaps we're forgetting about managing, our emotions and their worries all at once.
Yeah, no, that's a really great question. And it certainly is a balance. Self care for parents of children and teens with chronic illness is a really important way to ensure that you have the capacity to cope with your own emotions while also helping your child manage theirs. And we know that parents who cope better also have kids that cope better because it's a little bit of modeling. Additionally, learning how to foster resilience is really beneficial. So, whenever possible, it's important to maintain routine in an accessible way, normalize the child's experience, which we talked about earlier. Things like keeping up with hobbies, social interactions, and school when feasible and accessible um, helps kids feel a sense of normalcy, access their peer supports, and have a full life. Recognizing that your child has been brave when doing hard things is one way to be intentional about recognizing resilience. And something I always say to families is that bravery is not the absence of fear, but persistence despite it. And so encouraging them to talk about their fears and celebrate the small victories can make a really huge difference. I love the activity Rosebud Thorn and often encourage families to do this daily during a meal or before bed. And this is when each person shares a rose, which is something good that happened, or a blessing, a bud, so something they're excited for, and then a thorn, so something not so fun or a bummer. And this encourages kids and teens to express their emotions openly and have the opportunity to then be validated and talk about both medical and non medical events in their lives.
I love that. And something that you just mentioned was for parents, the self-care and the hobbies. Do you find that parents, when they're looking after children with chronic illness, perhaps put themselves last, don't feel that they have time, and then because they're not looking after themselves, perhaps it's having a negative effect overall, even though it's of course so challenging, right? Because you're trying to find your own
Mhm.
maybe they're working and just at the doctors, in hospitals. Do you have any tips of, some quick self-care or something, or hobbies? How can they fit that into their lives when they're solely looking after their children and feel like they don't have time?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We actually find that a lot of parents during the chronic illness journey when their child is getting diagnosed, they will also be facing their own health challenges, or they will begin to face their own health challenges
Mm.
because the stress of it can take a toll on your body, right? And especially if you're not able to take care of yourself and cope, it can have negative impacts. So it's really important. Some things, one of the biggest things I think about self care is the intentionality behind it. I
Mhm.
personally believe that everything can be self care. Going to your own doctor's appointment can be self care if you frame it that way, or doing something as small as like making yourself a cup of coffee and watching Instagram reels for 5 minutes while you drink that coffee. It doesn't have to be conventional things like skincare. For some people, self care is giving their partner a hug for like 15 seconds. There's like actual science that says you need at least 8 hugs a day to like maintain like steady emotional regulation. And so even just like incorporating that kind of thing into your daily routine, just these small things that you can get when you can be really, really beneficial.
Oh, I love that. So, for the listeners who maybe are struggling, get out your pen and paper and pop down 8 hugs, make a cup of tea, maybe even just going and getting fresh air for a moment, right? And
Yeah.
being conscious that you deserve this time. And it doesn't have to be, like you said, spending half an hour. I don't have any child with chronic illness, but like I don't even spend half an hour on self-care for my face. So, it can be these non-conventional ways that can really, I guess, help these parents manage better day to day. And I love that 8 hugs a day. I didn't know that. My husband's
Yeah.
6-second kisses. So
Yeah.
we do these 6-second kisses, and now my twins see my husband and I doing it, so they do it, and now
That's so cute.
when my boys, they're like 1, 2, and he's gone up to 10 seconds. So I'm just like
Oh,
kissing all day long with these, but it's really beautiful, and there is, I guess, it's very
yeah.
similar to the hugs, right? This connection is part of the self care, and it sends out good hormones, right, throughout the body.
Mm,
Maybe these parents listening need, right? We need that.
yeah.
Really important. So basically, it sounds like routine and communication are of course crucial. I loved your rose, what you spoke about the rose. I think that is such
Yeah.
way to integrate speaking about emotions. Do you have any other specific strategies you recommend for families to balance treatment and daily life, which is probably very busy?
Yeah, for sure. It can definitely be overwhelming and busy at times. And a great strategy is something that people can forget a lot about when children face medical challenges, which is just allowing kids to be kids, give them the space to be children. Trying to balance medical experiences with like normal experiences of childhood, such as time to play, are crucial. Play is actually where children process most of their emotions in a safe space. So it's great to give them that. Planning fun things to look forward to after an appointment is another strategy, like visiting with friends or getting a nice treat from the hospital cafeteria. I have tons of patients who, after they see me, like go to get a cookie and they're so excited about it. They're like, I couldn't wait to come to the hospital to get a cookie. So it's a great strategy to let them be kids still. Um, and then you can also encourage fun rituals before medical experiences that help to sandwich like the medicalized experience with normal experiences. And this could be things like choosing an outfit to wear to the hospital, or bringing a stuffy along, or even creating like a playlist for the drive to the hospital. Any of the normal things that you would typically do, just kind of pairing them with your medical tasks.
I love that. And do you feel that maybe pairing it with positive things like listening to music and high energy, high vibration activities, let's call it, can then flow on to what's going to happen in the appointment? So they go in less stressed and on you know what I mean? Like, is that
Hmm.
part of the strategy here to make them give
Yeah.
better energy?
100%. Yeah, we talk a lot. I talk a lot with families about building positive brain pathways and trying to like rewrite what we would call like negative brain pathways, for lack of better terms, and doing these things that can release, good neurotransmitters or happy hormones like dopamine and serotonin before and or after a medical experience can be so important to help kids regulate, and to help them have a more positive baseline. And it can also help to create a positive association with their medical experiences. That doesn't mean that like things might not be hard sometimes, because that's the reality of them. But the hope is that when they have a hard medical experience, they look back and they remember, okay, it was hard, but there was also this good part to it.
Well, I love it. I think that is such a good takeaway. And I guess very quick, easy to implement, just putting on their favorite music and singing and dancing maybe on the way to the appointment and things like that. So thank you. That's really great. So before we continue, I do want to take a moment to tell you about Levelty, on an incredible app that is for kids and parents. Levelty is more than just a chore tracker. It turns parenting into a shared adventure with reward systems and fun engagement. You can play with your child, listen to each other, and build lifelong routines together. It's a great way to teach responsibility while keeping the bond strong. And the best part, it's all built on unconditional love and play. So download Levelty today and take your family routine to the next level. The link will be in the description below. So back to our discussion. One thing I've heard from parents is the anxiety their children experience around medical procedures, which is quite normal, obviously. Even adults feel that. What can parents do to ease that fear?
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, like it is such a normal experience, and such a common thing. The first step I would say is to be honest, in an age appropriate way. So children often feel more anxious when they don't know what to expect. So it's
Mhm.
important to use clear language, allow them to ask any question they have, and explain what they can expect from a sensory perspective. So, what will they see, smell, feel, and so on. And you can even practice medical play, which lets them process this anxiety in a safe environment. Child life specialists can also guide families through this if needed. And it's important to validate and normalize that anxiety as well, to let them know that it's okay to feel this way and it's normal to feel this way. And the good news is you don't have to feel this way by yourself. We're going to do it together. And the second thing that we talked about a little bit earlier on is making sure to take care of yourself. Studies show that children's medical anxiety can often mirror their parents' own medical anxiety. So it's important to access support if needed, and there's no shame in needing support. Mm, Having a child or anyone in your life with a chronic illness is a hard thing, and no one's supposed to automatically know how to cope with a child's chronic illness, and no one on your healthcare team expects that you automatically know how to cope with that either.
Yeah, wonderful, of course. And you mentioned something there, medical play, and it's such a fascinating idea. Can you explain a little bit more what that looks like and what it means?
Yeah, for sure. Medical play is using like toys, dolls, and medical supplies, whether they're pretend or real. I use a mix of both to role play procedures. And this can help children understand what's happening, and it can help give them a sense of control. There are a few ways to do this. So the first way is you can model, which is playing through what the child can expect and they can watch it. And then you can create a coping plan and play through that as well. You could also allow it to be child led, and let your child be the healthcare professional. So a lot of kids will want to be doctors or nurses, and then they want to do the procedure on their stuffed animal. So, for example, if the child needs to get an IV or a needle, then they want to do that with their stuffed animal. And this is what gives them that sense of control. And you can actually expect children to play out their past medical experiences and express emotions about it through play, which helps them to process these events. Medical play is also for teenagers. A lot of people think it's just for younger kids, but I do it tons with teenagers. It allows them to rehearse steps to medical advance, and also feel more comfortable with medical materials in general because they can touch it, in a non threatening way, and they can practice doing it so that they know what to expect.
Wow, I love that. So it sounds like you're almost forward pacing what is going to happen and developing more relaxed emotions, right? During this waiting
Mm,
period in a fun environment that I guess would have so much emotional impact from when the time comes. It's almost like visualizing, right? It's like visualizing what's going to happen in a safer environment that preempts kind of a better experience for them. Is that what's going on?
Yeah, and like when I talked about rehearsing coping plans, something that a lot of kids will do is they will, for example, if they're pretending that their stuffy is getting blood work done, like they need to get a blood draw, then we'll practice their coping plan. And so that will include like asking for freezing spray, and then practicing deep breaths meanwhile the stuffy is getting the needle and things like that. And so it actually helps them to rehearse the strategies that are going to help them get through the procedure. And doing that builds those positive brain pathways that make it easier for those strategies to come into play and impact the brain when they actually have the procedure and it's like, okay, this is the time for the strategy to work. And so a lot of kids will talk about how they feel so much better about a procedure after they've done medical play, even if the procedure hasn't happened yet, because it really brings it down to their level, and it's very concrete. So there's not a lot of space for them to, have misconceptions. And then it allows us to know exactly what they're thinking.
I love it. And I'm going to ask a tricky question now.
Mm.
If your child doesn't want to do it and there's a lot of resistance, do you force them to do it? I mean, for someone who's listening who says, okay, this is great, they go to try it and the child's like, I don't want to do that. And maybe they're already stressed. I don't know, maybe it's an age thing. What advice can you give to parents that want to try this, believe in it, but are struggling for their child to actually come on board?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We really believe that medical play should be child led. So if the child is refusing medical play or really doesn't want it, then we don't force it. There are lots of other ways to incorporate like versions of medical play. You can read books. You can also just model, which is like the first type of medical play I talked about. So if your child doesn't want to engage in the play, but is open to watching you do it, like you play through it, that is actually just as effective. And it can also be really effective for families where the child has a lot of medical complexities or like a developmental disability or something like that, and can't engage in like interactive play. It can be really helpful for that. The other thing you can do is you can have them watch videos that are made for children about these things. The reason that like reading a book or watching a video or having them watch you might be more appealing to your child is because it's a little bit more passive. So if there's an element of avoidance in their coping, then they won't feel like they have to take action to do the medical play. And it just makes it a little bit more accessible for them.
I love it. Thank you so much. I think that was really a good addition. And what about, I'm getting really into this medical play, but what about,
Mhm.
said if your child is not able to actively take part, what about if the family does it together? If there's a partner or other siblings, would you say getting the family involved and making it feel like a bit of a family medical play is a good idea?
Yeah, 100%. We actually really encourage siblings and other family members to get involved because it really helps with that normalization piece. It
Mm.
helps to dispel isolation. It helps to make the child feel like, okay, this is not as scary because everybody else is doing it. And it also helps the siblings to understand what's going on too, because part of child life is sibling support. And so it's so important, of course, to support the patient, but it's also really important to support the other family members because like what we know scientifically is that the environment that we are surrounded in does have an impact on our physiological and psychosocial health. And so if we can have families that function as a unit against chronic illness, that can really help with outcomes.
Oh, I love it. And sometimes I think I've seen families with chronic illness with children. Sometimes the other siblings feel a little bit like they don't have as much attention and things like that. So bringing them in and getting that emotional, getting emotional with everything and making them feel part of it and not isolated. Because I think the other children can also feel isolated.
Yeah.
So I absolutely love that. Thank you so much. And of course, supporting a child with chronic illness is not just about the child. We've spoken a lot about the parents, but what about a parent who's listening who's just feeling absolutely overwhelmed? Maybe all these things actually are not even at reach right now for them because
Mhm.
they're overwhelmed. So, what kind of advice can you give them?
Yeah, 100%. So we talked a little bit of self-care, which is about self-care, which is crucial, and you can't pour from an empty cup. So something that parents should be able to have access to is accessing their own support systems. And I want to be clear that this looks different for everyone. For some people, it's entailing supports like friends, therapy, even medication sometimes for that period of time where you're facing a chronic illness with your child at the beginning. Um, Taking time for themselves, being intentional about hobbies, those types of things, um, and asking for help when you need it is a sign of strength, not weakness. So if starting those small self care tasks feels impossible in itself, it might be time to talk to like your family doctor, your GP about the toll that, facing like chronic illness in your child's life is having on you. And if you're struggling to cope with your child's or teen's illness, which is a really normal and valid experience, you can also ask their care team if they know of any support available for parents of children with chronic illness. Because, like I said before, nobody expects you to know how to do these things. Like, it is not, there's no guide to parenthood of a child with chronic illness. So, really engaging in supports that are built for that type of situation, and also helping your brain and your body be able to even engage in those coping mechanisms can be really important because it's true. Like, there are a lot of people who might not be able to even get to the part of engaging in self care, even if they want to. And that's when I would really recommend talking to like a therapist or a doctor, some sort of healthcare professional.
Great advice. Thank you so much. Love that. It's definitely easy to forget that parents are going through this too, right? So, are there any resources you recommend for parents listening?
Yeah, I love recommending supports that help to normalize, validate, and bring the experience of others into light, which can help with feelings of helplessness and isolation. Sometimes it can be helpful to see that, other people have gone through this before me and they have made it out okay and they have been able to cope with it. That doesn't mean that maybe they didn't have a hard time with it like I did, but that means that, they were still able to get through it. And so often parents of children with chronic illness will actually share their stories, whether it be through support groups, books, or memoirs that they write, even social media accounts. These are really great places to start, especially social media. It's free and accessible. So if financial impact of like support groups or books is a worry, and you have access to a phone, you can just search like the chronic condition on Instagram, for example. And Instagram is a really great hub for these types of resources. And you can see a lot of things.
Amazing. Great tips really for these free resources. Like, it doesn't have to cost money. Jules, thank you so much for sharing your expertise today. I think many parents listening will definitely feel encouraged and empowered, really, after this conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been really great to discuss such an important topic, and I love talking about it. And I hope this conversation has helped parents and families to feel more equipped to navigate their medical journey. Um, yeah, so if you are a parent, caregiver, or a friend of a child with chronic illness and are looking for support on social media, talking about social media support, you can feel free to reach out to me on Instagram. My Instagram is at Do It With Heart, or you can email me too at doitwithheartccls@gmail.com.
Thank you so much. And before we go, for any listeners looking for more support, we'll have, of course, links to resources in the show notes. And don't forget to check out Levelty to help make family life a little smoother. Thanks for tuning in to Parenting Issues. We'll see you next time.